How's it going, Mets and overall baseball fans? Thank you guys so much for chiming in for the latest episode of Bleav in Queens. This time, episode 32. Myself, Wardy, here on YouTube. That you guys know me. That is Anthony Recker, former New York Met, now MLB Network analyst, and Joe Serralo, host of the Serralo Sports Talk Show. Guys, we have a lot to get into on all the latest news and rumors regarding the team in Queens. We're going to be breaking down some key news that just came out regarding Buck Showalter, a key waiver signing that may not seem like a big deal, but I'm excited to break that down shortly. Latest rumors regarding all the starting pitching front, both internally, externally, and so much more to get into in today's show. And hopefully we'll be able to get to some of your questions here on the live YouTube chat. But before we go any further, guys, Joe, what you got for me?
Tyler, I got to let you, Rec, and everyone else out there know that this show, of course, is brought to you all by BetOnline. Head on over to betonline.ag and use the promo code Bleav. That's BLEAV for your one-time, first-time 50% welcome bonus. Any deposit between $50 and $1,000, BetOnline will match up to 50% of. Guys, go get your bets in. NFL season is about halfway done. It's in full swing. College football season is winding down. Hoops, college hoops, they're all gearing up, and get some futures in, right? Will Buck Showalter repeat as National League Manager of the Year next season? Get those futures in only at betonline.ag. It's where the games begin.
And speaking of Buck Showalter, we just talked last week. We were talking off air, and originally Rex said he thought Snit was going to win the award. Now, of course, that did not happen. Buck Showalter, breaking news, if you're watching live on YouTube, was just announced the first time in Mets history, Munster managers, as the NL Manager of the Year. So, guys, I want to know your quick raw reactions to that. To me, I'm anything but surprised. When you look at the Mets and all the turmoil they had this past offseason, signing key players, trading for some key players, having a lot to do and having the first year under Buck. Remember, Buck wasn't even given the liberty of being able to talk to these players to start his tenure as manager with the lockout going on. So there was a lot of adversity facing early. A Mets team that underperformed in 2021 in Steve Cohen's first year as owner. Now they overperform, you could say, in a lot of ways, at least from a regular season standpoint, winning 101 games, the second best record in Mets history, regular season wise. So starting off with you, Rec, what's your raw takeaway from Buck Showalter being announced NL Manager of the Year?
Yeah, I mean, look, those three managers, you couldn't have gone wrong with any of them. I think all three of them, they were the best records in the National League, those three teams. The reason I really thought Snit would get it last time when we were on here was basically because Atlanta pipped New York at the end of the season. I mean, they took that division last second, and after their start, the way they kind of galvanized and the way that run they had for the last 4 months of the season, I thought the writers really were going to cling to that and say, well, that's it. See, the Mets don't deserve anything. No, they don't get it. So that was really my kind of thought process there. The more I thought about it, the more I thought, wow, Dave Roberts, LA had a star-studded group, and I get it, but they had a ton of injuries and even some underperformance, and they still won 111 games. Now, that division wasn't the best, even though Dave tried to convince everyone that it was. But realistically, I was like, wow, maybe he deserves it. But of course, look, again, none of these guys are being shortchanged by being on this list. They all deserve to be there, and Buck winning it doesn't surprise me. I mean, this team was extremely consistent this year. They won 101 games, finished second in the division, unfortunately. But realistically, they had one of the best seasons in franchise history, and after underperformance the last several years, you get a team that finally lives up to it. And yeah, that manager does deserve consideration for Manager of the Year, and good for Buck. Won it and now tied for the most all time.
What about you, Joe?
Yeah, unlike Rec, I was Team Buck the whole way. I thought it was actually pretty clear cut. Not that Snit and Dave Roberts didn't have tremendous years, or not that their teams didn't have tremendous years. But when you look at Buck Showalter and the Mets this year, right? Coming into the season, obviously, y'all know I'm a big gambler. The Mets win total over under was 88.5, right? So the Mets went over that by 12.5 wins. The only team in the National League that exceeded their over under by a bigger margin was the Dodgers. They had one game on the Mets in that department. Theirs was 98.5. They went over. Actually, no, 98.5. They went over by the same. It was both 12.5 wins over their expected over under. So when you look at that, right, how much of that was because of Buck and how much of that for the Dodgers was because of Roberts? I think Buck had a bigger imprint, a bigger fingerprint on the Mets' success than Roberts did for the Dodgers. And I know that this is a regular season award, but we see it year after year. how the Dodgers, they have incredible regular seasons. They get to the playoffs and they choke. And more often than not, that choking, Dave Roberts usually has a hand in there. He usually makes some poor decisions, whether it's bullpen management or other decisions. And I think that writers, just like a lot of Dodger fans that I know out here in LA, aren't all that impressed with Dave Roberts, despite the team's success, because of mainly their star-studded roster. Showalter, Rec, to your point, every year, Met fans expect a collapse. This year in September, it came in a small way, but they still won 101 games. That big collapse, that June swoon that we gear up for every year, it never came. And, it was his first year with the ball club. So I think that in year one, to take him to the second most wins in franchise history, it made him a clear-cut pick.
I think the last thing you can make note is just the true culture change, right? Because Roberts, you know what you're getting when you're going to the Dodgers because he's been there for an extended period of time now. Buck comes in with a clubhouse, which was very much in disarray entering this season. I think a prime example of what Buck was able to help do for this Mets team was Jeff McNeil this year, of course, being the NL batting champ and a guy that we didn't really know what we were going to be getting heading into this season with a lot of uncertainties on, his clubhouse personality, along with him being a key performer yet again. And to see him along with this entire Mets line from a rotation standpoint and of course from position player standpoint, so many of these guys had either career years or amongst the best in their careers. And you could just tell that team felt truly in unison, something that hasn't been the same thing you could say about the Mets in quite some time. So I was very happy to see that. And overall, I'm very happy to see Buck win this award. But with that being said, again, today's show, we were going to originally do a little bit of a different topic, but there's so many rumblings going on. There's a lot of news that has come out. I think there's a lot of valid points that we can share our personal opinions and see if we agree or disagree on. And there was one thing regarding the Mets as of now that came out today.
Excuse me.
Of a
Bless you.
Okay, bless you. God bless. Two things, actually, I should say. One is regarding a player that the Mets acquired. Another is regarding a player that they are going to let go. And I guess let's start with the player that they're allowing to let go. I'm not sure exactly how much of a background you guys have on, but Jake Mangum is one of the better outfield prospects the Mets currently have. Now, he's at the age of 26, had a very good year in 3 different minor leagues, starting out in a single A, going all the way to triple A, a 300 hitter, not known for his pop, but he can spread the field. He plays anywhere. He has that hard and hustle mentality. Gives me a lot of Jeff McNeil-esque vibes, especially. Gets on base at a good clip, and he was not protected for the Rule 5 draft this year. So that came as a surprise to many, including myself. And you're thinking, okay, if the Mets trade this guy in a deal, then it makes sense. But they don't. That's kind of a head scratcher. So before we get into what the Mets did acquire today, do you guys have any raw thoughts regarding Jake Mangum? Because for me, this was a little bit of an unfortunate surprise to find out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally really surprised about that. The Mets this past year didn't have a whole ton of outfield depth, and Tyler Naquin's going to be gone as a free agent. Terrence Gore is gone; he's a free agent. Obviously, Jankowski. Last year they got rid of him middle of the season. So this is a move that it does surprise me because as great as our starting outfield is, you need depth. And Mangum's a guy who is really highly touted for his glove. This year had probably the best offensive year of his career in the minors. He's not going to come in and be a star, right? He's already 27 years old, but I'm not expecting him to come in and fill Brandon Nimmo's shoes. I just thought he'd be a really good 4th, maybe even 5th outfielder. So yeah, I mean, I'm surprised. It also tells me maybe they've got a lot of faith in Khalil Lee. Maybe if they're willing to let Mangum go, that they think that Khalil Lee is the guy should they need outfield depth from within and not from, free agency.
I'll just add this. Just because they didn't protect him doesn't mean he's gone. And
That's
looking
fair.
at his numbers, I mean, no one's knocking down the Mets' doors to get to Jake Mangum. No offense, Jake. He's had 13 extra base hits this year. I forget what it was now. Last year, 15, I think. Doesn't really steal a ton of bags. Can steal some bags, but not a ton. He's had some injury issues. Yeah, like dude can hit 280, 300. Great. No pop. Doesn't steal a ton of bags. Good defender. I don't see anybody going out of their way to steal Jake Mangum and throw him on their big league roster all year. So to me, this is just a move to keep depth more than anything else. Why create the space when you probably have to clear waivers later with him after you sign a ton of guys because they need a lot at the big league level right now. So realistically, it just doesn't make sense. Just let him go through the Rule 5, and if not, you keep them. I mean, I went through 3 Rule 5s and never got taken. And I can tell you, from my perspective, it sucked. It's awful. Every year that that day would come, I would basically get a phone call, let me know whether or not I got taken or not. And every year I didn't. And I remember talking to my minor league player development director, and he was like, "I don't know why no one's taking you. I don't get it." And I just kept plugging along, kept doing my thing. And you just gotta do what you do. But in his case, this is just a situation where I don't see the Mets needing to have protected him. That's, to me, it wasn't necessary, nor were any of the others, on that list of guys that they could have.
Rick, I actually want to ask you, because that's interesting. When Rule 5 Day came around, how stressful was that? Were you in a position where you were hoping to get taken because, hey, you're guaranteed an MLB roster spot?
Yeah.
Or were there
Yes.
points where you were like, hey, I like my current situation. I'd rather be in my current spot than go God knows where?
No, you don't
You
want to
always
be.
wanted to, huh?
Well, when you're in the minor leagues and you're, first of all, I was taken in the 18th round out of a Division III school. The year prior, the A's selected Landon Powell in the first round and Kurt Suzuki in the, I don't remember if it was I think it was the second round, either the second round or the, what is it called after the first? I can't even think.
Supplemental?
Right now. The supplemental. Thank you. I don't remember. He was taken early. So they took 2 catchers in the first 2 rounds, whatever it was. And so, being selected in the 18th round the next year out of a D3 school, senior sign, they had no stake in me. They didn't care. I was just depth for them. If I played my butt off and forced my way to the big leagues, great, good for us. We're the A's, and we just brought up some kid who wasn't supposed to be here. Awesome. If I didn't, oh well. I was in the minor leagues catching dudes, making them better. That was literally the plan for me. So that's, nobody wants to be in that situation where you're not valued at all. You have zero value to an organization. Look, the A's were great to me. I'm not putting them down by any means. They gave me my opportunity. They kept me around. They let me continue to get better. And then they gave me a shot in the big leagues. They, gave me my first shot up there. So I'm not saying I wish I had gone, my career was totally different. But yeah, in that moment, yeah, there were a couple times I remember, my agent basically going to the A's and saying, "Hey, is there a chance to trade Anthony? Is there somewhere else he can go?" Because I just didn't have a path to the big leagues. It just wasn't there at the time. And anytime you're in that situation, you would love to be moved. Anytime you get moved, whether it's a waiver claim or a trade or Rule 5, whatever it is, you're always going to a better situation, going to a team that wants you. So there's no situation there where I'd be like, "Oh no, it's terrible. I don't want to go." No, yeah, heck yeah, take me. I'm ready. Let's go. So.
Huh, that's interesting. I always thought from a player's perspective, it was like, oh no, Rule 5 days here. By the way, Wardy, did the glasses just come out of nowhere? Am I missing something? What the hell happened?
Oh yeah, no, I have blue light glasses.
Okay.
So my eyes have been bugging a little bit, so I'm hoping that helps throughout the show because I got the computer screen and all these different lights on me. So we'll see how it does.
I'm looking at Rec while he's talking about the Rule 5 draft, and then I look at you and I'm like, oh, Bobby Valentine. Well, look who's here.
I was thinking Harry Callis, but it's the same thing.
Oh, did want to mention one comment here from Grant, good friend of mine. He says, "Rec, I made my college debut against Alvernia." There you go. So love that. And Rec has the caddy shirt on. If you know, you know. Love to see that. There we go.
Repping.
Okay.
This was under my high school jersey when I played this
awesome.
shirt right here.
Love
this
that.
There he is. He's still kicking. He's still there. The name on the back is gone though. Name and number and everything was on there. I think that's all gone.
What was the high school number?
25. I was a big McGuire fan growing up.
There you go. I played against Caddy a lot growing up for travel soccer. And every time I played those kids, they just were always twice the size of me and my entire team. I don't know what it was, but they had linemen out there on defense, especially. It was always fun to play up against them. But let's get back on track here. So the Mets did make a move today, and they also lost, I will mention, Nate Fisher, the southpaw, who pitched that one gem of a game for the Mets. He signed a minor league contract with the White Sox. We love Fish Dog. We wish him all the best. Not really going to expand on much there. He was a fun story for the Amazons this year. However, the Mets did pick up an arm today. His name is Steven Ridings. He's a 6'8", 220-pounder right-hander from the Yanks organization. Didn't pitch at all this past year, dealing with some back injuries. However, made his MLB debut towards the end of the 2021 season, had a sub-2 ERA. The kid touches over 100 on the gun with his fastball and his sinker. He has a nasty slider, mid-80s as well. So not that we need to harp on much, but I just thought that was a very nice, low-risk, high-reward move for the Mets, for a kid who's definitely going to be looking to try to crack this Mets bullpen, should he be invited for the chance this upcoming spring. So anything further you guys would like to add on regarding him?
Yeah, for writings, I mean, for me, this is one of those. I wouldn't expect him to make the big league team out of out of spring next year if he's still in the roster. I mean, we'll have to see what happens this offseason.
Yeah.
It's going to be kind of crazy. They have a lot of guys to sign, but this is a guy who can come in and compete in spring and then learn from, and honestly, that should be starting today. I'm assuming there's going to be some physicals and other things that have to take place first, but he should have a meeting with Jeremy Hefner pretty soon, whether it's on Zoom or at a facility somewhere, and just start getting to work, because he has tools. I mean, you can't coach throwing 100. I mean, I guess nowadays they do a little bit, so I guess you can.
Driveline, baby.
It's still not that common. I mean, it's still tough to find guys who can touch 100. He's got some movement on his pitches. He's a guy who's toolsy. He's a toolsy guy who an organization like this can bring in, and they're hoping that they can find that secret sauce to, make them something. The reason I say don't expect him in the big leagues, and I'm very confident in saying that, he has 149 minor league innings. 149 big professional innings. He has 5 innings in the big leagues, 144 in the minor leagues. So I don't see that as an option for someone who should be starting the year for the Mets in any kind of a role in the big leagues. It just doesn't make sense. You let him go to AAA. You let him continue to find himself, prove himself, whatever it is. And eventually, maybe halfway through the year, he's just balling. And you have a need, boom, call this guy up. Or even if you don't, he's balling and you just call him up because he looks great. Great. Or I need to see a lot more before I'm even ready to think that he's going to make this roster or have any kind of an impact next year. But still, I like the pickup. It's a great idea, and see what happens.
So I got to be honest, I'm excited about this move. Now, Rec, I agree. He shouldn't start the year on the big league roster. That would be a very Will Pons move, right? Let's take the guy who's making like the league minimum and let's just throw him in there opening day. He should start the year in AAA. But you guys see the shirt I'm wearing tonight. Bleav in Queens. Go to shop.bleav.com. Get your merch. Wearing the love it. Get wrecked. I'm wearing the Bring him Vogelback shirt. Now, you guys remember.
Sorry, guys. I forgot my schmuck shirt, so I'm the schmuck, I guess.
You guys remember why I was very upset about the Vogelback trade when it originally happened, right?
Yeah.
Tyler, you want to point that out? Why?
Colin Holderman is why.
This guy reminds me so much of Colin Holderman, and that's why I love this move. You're dealing with a 6'8". First off, I see 6'8", and it's like I start salivating. I need to be calmed down a little bit. You're dealing with a 6'8" arm who throws 2 pitches on average 97 plus. Not only his 4-seamer, but his sinker too. So you're getting 97 plus with movement. The guy against righties, he's a 4-seam slider guy. Against lefties, he's a 4-seam sinker guy, mainly sinker. And I just think that if you can really like work on this guy's finesse, work on his location, again, Rec, to your point, 5 big league innings, not a big body of work, but in his 140 something professional innings, the guy's got 240 strikeouts. I mean, and usually what really stands out to me, sinker ball pitchers, they usually are contact guys. They usually don't strike out a lot of guys. So you have a sinker baller who's also got really good K numbers. I'm thinking if you can just refine his stuff a little bit and make him a little more polished in the minors, I see him as a potential guy that can be called up because injuries, unfortunately, are inevitable. Yeah. And I think maybe, have a good little impact on this team. This move, actually, at first, I kind of was like, all right, they got a minor league pitcher. I looked into him a little bit today, and I'm excited about this move.
This feels like the type of move the Mets hoped they were getting with Sam McWilliams to start the 2021 season, if you guys remember. McWilliams was a guy, again, tall reliever, has some nasty stuff, but was never able to put together.
They gave him a big league deal.
Yes, and he struggled mightily in minors. He's nowhere to be seen right now. So the Mets are hoping that this is a different situation here with Ridings. And I will say, I did not know much at all about the guy when the move first happened earlier today at the time of recording this. However, I'm having Yankees fans I know that are content creators reach out to me, and Yanks fans alike. I never saw something so unison on everyone that was a Yanks fan being upset by this move as to, oh my goodness, Cashman, how could you do this? Why would you let this guy go? A lot of fans were under the impression that he would have a solid impact on their bullpen at some point, at least in this upcoming 2023 season. So nasty stuff, electric arm. It's about putting it together. And speaking of Driveline, let's pivot now into some of the Mets hires they've done over the past week or so, because one of those guys is from Driveline, and that is going to be Eric. I think, is it Jaegers? Is it Jagers? Is it Jaggers? One of those three. He was signed to the Mets for their pitching staff as a new director.
It's Jaggers.
Jagers? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
We got Yarmir in here.
I'm kidding.
I was gonna say,
just went for the one.
I just wanted to throw something else out there.
I genuinely.
By the way,
know.
Quick shout out. Ridings is a Comac kid. He's a Long Island kid.
Yep.
So shout out Long Island being represented with the Mets. My first Little League World Series game when I was 12 came against Comac, and we wiped them. So just got to throw that in there.
There you go. But yeah, the Mets made this signing. He comes from the Reds organization, and the Reds, he was their assistant pitching coach. And this excites me. He's only at the age of 27. He's now going to be paired to help with his pitching staff along with Jeremy Hefner. He's going to be overseeing everything from a player development standpoint, especially for pitchers in the minor leagues. So that is a guy where I'm sure you're going to see connections quickly build between himself and Steven Ridings. And he was also working with Driveline. Driveline was originally partnered, I believe, with the Reds, but then they parted ways a couple years ago. Driveline has done a fantastic job using sabermetrics to help get the best out of pitchers. The Reds have really done a good job over the years, using Driveline-esque qualities to get the best out of their guys. So I like that move a lot for the Mets. So that's one of two significant hires I would say they made. The second one was a nice one yesterday that happened. That was by bringing Jeff Albert as director of hitting. This came out on Monday, and Albert was previously in the St. Louis Cardinals organization, first as a minor league hitting coach, and then he was in the role with the big leagues from 2019 to 2022. And this was a move that the Cardinals were not happy at all about letting happen. He parted with them after this year, and the Cardinals and their management did not want to see him leave. So Albert now comes into the Mets staff. He's going to be overseeing everything from a hitting standpoint, give you more eyes to deal with along with Eric Chavez. And just like that, the Mets are bringing in some nice minds. Also, another thing keeping with Albert is he was overseeing everything for minor leagues with their hitters with the Astros organization for multiple years in the MLB before then coming to the Cardinals. So plenty of experience there. This guy was apparently highly viewed in the Cardinals organization, and now he's part of the Mets. So anything further you guys would like to share on these hires before we get further here in the show?
I mean, I don't know too much personally about Albert and his past, but just looking at the two teams that this guy worked with, right? He was with the Houston Astros, director of hitting in the minor leagues, then St. Louis. What do those two teams have in common? A lot of homegrown talent when you look at their position players. A lot of guys that come up and make fairly instant impacts. Houston, obviously, for the last 6 years, almost entirely homegrown in terms of their lineup. And then St. Louis, I mean, they've got guys come up like O'Neill and Edman and Donovan. And it's just like every year there's a new guy in that Cardinal lineup who's making a difference right behind Arenado and Goldschmidt. So pretty good track record, if you ask me. I mean, like I said, don't know too much about him personally, but based on the organizations he's been with, it's a move I'm pretty happy with.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is called organizational depth among your coaching staff, to be honest with you. The more minds you have, particularly people who think outside the box, who come from different areas, who do things differently, the better you're going to be. And I know for a fact that the Mets, the front office, Billy Epler, they're looking for different ideas, different thoughts, different verbiage, everything. And so, bringing guys in who have a track record of doing things successfully and differently at times, it's a great idea. And the one area where the Mets, in my opinion, from the time I got to the organization in 2013 up until now, have really just continued to need help is on the minor league development side. I got there and I knew who Ron Romanek was. I'd worked with him in Oakland. He was their pitching coordinator. Great. I mean, he was fantastic. But on the other side, and even with him, there were still some holes because he hadn't had time to really implement everything that he liked to do in the organization by the time I had gotten there. That had happened, kind of in the years following. But realistically, I mean, this organization's been behind, with this process, with bringing up minor leaguers. And so, look, these are good hires, and I expect they'll continue to be more, to be honest with you, probably at lower levels, but there'll continue to be more hires to continue to try to get as much out of the minor league system as they can.
One final thing I want to make note regarding Albert, and this comes from the Cardinals GM himself. said the following, and I quote, "When you look at what was happening up at the big league level, people were tough on him. It wasn't an easy job. Our offense was good this year, though. I was hopeful he would come back, but there was a lot of frustration. Albert took a lot of blame on himself when things weren't going well. I was prepared to give him a new contract, but even before I got that out of my mouth, he already told me that he wasn't coming back." So just further tells you that, yeah, he was a guy that definitely was a little bit hard on himself during his time with the Cardinals. Again, taking accountability, that's a good thing. And big thing
There
as
was some
well.
weird. I just want to jump. There was some weird. There had to be some kind of weird turmoil in that Cardinals with that Cardinals coaching staff, because
There's
you've
been
seen some turnover. And
yes.
I mean, look at Schilt 2 years ago after he went on that
Exactly.
magical September. What did they win? Almost 20 in a row in September?
They said, "See you later."
Yeah.
They bring in Marmol. They still have another good year, and they're replacing coaches like it's nothing. I mean,
New bench coach,
hiring
right?
guys, letting them go.
Yeah.
I mean, guys, leaving on their own. It's interesting because that's an organization that typically has a lot of continuity, and
Mhm.
guys stay around a long time, and they have a ton of success. So it's I'm interested to see to hear what's going on in that organization right now among that coaching staff.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. But let's talk quickly on the Mets players that just denied their qualifying offer today, which was every single one of them. This should come as a surprise to absolutely nobody. Yes, because surely Jacob deGrom is going to accept a QO, which was less money than what he just opted out of. Yeah, surely that makes sense. Himself, Brandon Nimmo, and Chris Bassett alike all denied their qualifying offers. Now, should any of them part ways and sign with a different club, the Mets will get a compensation draft pick after the 4th round this year. Would have been higher, would have been in the 2nd round here, but because of the amount of money that the Mets spent over this past year, that is exactly why they would have a more lower level type draft pick as compensation. So just wanted to throw that out there. No one should be surprised by this. Hopefully the Mets can bring these guys back. But let's now pivot to Jacob deGrom here for a minute, because we have seen some reports came out yesterday, as a matter of fact. And again, I don't really think that this means too much. However, I do think that this is reaffirming at least what my mindset was for a while, that according to Ken Rosenthal, it is beyond unlikely that the Braves are going to land Jacob deGrom. And we saw those rumblings throughout the midseason that I said that Buster Olney was just trying to spice this up, especially to try to get under the Mets fans' skin. He tends to do this. Jake, growing up a Braves fan, makes sense from that aspect. But a Braves team that, according to Ken at least, even if they don't bring back Dansby, they aren't going to get a potential a Turner or even a Bogarts, because those guys are going to likely command more than Dansby. So even though that the Braves do have a good amount of money that they're working with, they're not in the comfortable area yet, at least, where they're willing to shell out a big contract for a player, say like Jake, who's going to command a good portion of their salary in comparison to everything else you're dealing with. So while anything can happen this offseason, I would say at this point in time, it's fair to say that the two teams to watch are the Mets and the Rangers. Would you guys agree or disagree with that notion?
Rec, I'll defer to you on this one first.
I think there are other teams to watch. I'm not going to say off the top of my head I know who they are. I mean, I would throw potentially San Diego in there just because it's San Diego. They'll do anything and everything.
They are crazy. I'll say that.
I would say the Dodgers are in there.
That's fair, especially
scary
after
to say,
Tyler
but
Anderson
they actually
today.
have a lot of money right now. I think the Giants too. You hear Aaron Judge to the Giants. Well, what if he doesn't go there? They got a ton of money to spend right now. There's a lot of teams out there that might be willing to shell out that kind of money for Jacob deGrom. And realistically, it depends on what kind of contract Jake's looking for. Is he going to bet on himself and go with like a 2-3 year ridiculous AAV type deal like Scherzer just got? Does he want to just land somewhere for the next 6 years and say, that's it? I want to see, 5 maybe, I don't know, and stay there for the rest of his career ish. I don't know. That's up to Jake to decide. But realistically, I think it's silly to even pigeonhole him into any one of two teams or so, because any team in Major League Baseball would love to have Jake for a certain price. It's just going to depend on what his market turns out to be. Realistically, and this isn't to be pessimistic to the Mets signing him, but if the Mets were all in on signing him, they would have already had an extension in spring training because they knew he was going to opt out. He said he was going to opt out. Everybody knew he was opting out. And so there would have been some kind of talks. Now, maybe there were, I don't know, but obviously they didn't come to any kind of conclusion. And realistically, look, he wants to kind of see what's out there, and he has every right to do that. So I'm not very optimistic that he's going to be a Met. I'm not saying he's not going to be. And I said this earlier. I think there's a chance that he ends up elsewhere, whether that's by his design or whether that's just because simply somebody's willing to pay more than maybe the Mets are. I don't know.
Yeah, I think when you look at like Steve Cohen and the way he operates, he wanted Edwin Diaz back and he got Edwin Diaz back like that. And I'm starting to wonder what was up, I'm still curious what the menu was for that night, because it had to be really good for Diaz to sign that quickly, to agree before free agency even opened. But I feel like the way Steve's going to operate on this one is he's going to let the market take shape, play out a little bit. I don't think Jake is going to just suddenly one day sign with the first team that offers him a boatload of money. I think Steve is going to see, what are the Rangers willing to do? What are the Dodgers willing to do? And then decide if, in his mind, it's best for the organization, both in 2023 and moving forward in 2025, 6, whatever. He's going to decide if paying that price point, matching or exceeding that price point, is worth it. I think that he's really waiting to see what other teams are willing to offer Jake before he comes in with an offer, because we already have. What was that, Rick?
What's interesting on that front is how long can he wait? Because
True.
You don't bring DeGrom back. My question to you guys is:
Rodon.
Is Rodon still there?
Yeah,
because if you wait too long and Rodon's gone by then, you're gonna be you may see the Mets, and I truly believe Rodon's gonna sign before DeGrom. So that's why I bring this up.
Ooh.
You may see the Mets have to make a decision then. Are we going for Rodon? And if not, I guess we have to sign DeGrom. And I think that's really what it comes down to for me. Could Jake sign before Rodon? Of course. Who knows? Maybe he gets blown away by an offer. We'll see. But I truly think this could be one of those scenarios where the Mets don't want to wait around too long. They don't want to mess around with this and say, oh, we got to make sure we get him at the right value, whichever one it is, because they're going to need a guy. And is it Verlander? I don't think so. I mean, look, he was great this year. You don't want to be the team that signs him on that 1 year, $30 million deal, and then he falls off the cliff, because you can see that coming at some point. He's 39, for gosh sake. Like, it's going to happen. You're playing with fire. And, look, Rodon's had an injury history. Jake has obviously now had a little bit of an injury history. So at some point, you're just going to have to suck it up and pick one of these guys, figure it out. Because if you don't sign one of them, they're not going to make a trade. They're not going to go out and make a trade for a huge ace. They'd have to give up their farm, and they've said many times they're not going to do that. I love Scherzer, but I don't even trust that he's going to continue to perform at the level he has, at least not without injury. That's the thing that keeps coming up. The last couple years, you've seen it late in the year, tight back, the sore elbow, whatever it is. Like, this stuff keeps coming up late in the year. What's going to keep coming up? He's getting older. That's just the way it is. And so putting all your eggs in that basket just is not a good idea. So that's where I think, signing a Rodon and somebody else, at least getting 2 more starters, maybe even a third. And if you look at the free agent list of starters, that's actually maybe the deepest position in free agency. Yeah, I mean, you look at, I haven't done a deep dive into the relievers yet because it's a huge list. But to all the other positions, like all the position players, there's not a ton out there. Like,
shortstop
if you
would be the one.
Oh, 100%. But who are they going to fall over themselves to sign when they've got Francisco Lindor playing there for 9 more years? I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Bogarts makes third makes sense because you can move him to third very easily. The others, to me, I don't see the fit. I don't get it. Unless, if Trey Turner's really willing to play second or center, but I don't think he wants to. I think he wants to play short. That's why the Nationals, did what they did when he was young and moved people around and got him to shortstop eventually. I think that's where he wants to be. And so, again, maybe even that's why the Dodgers were like, yeah, okay, Corey Seager, see you later. We got this guy. Like, I think he really wants to play shortstop, and I think that's where he ends up. So there's just not a lot of fits out there for the Mets. But when it comes to starting pitching, I think there are quite a few. Unfortunately, several of those guys were already on the roster last year because Bassett's one of the best starting pitchers out there. Taijuan Walker, you could say, is on that list of top 10 starting pitchers out there. So it's kind of funny that they're going to be shopping probably in the same market that they've been in the last couple of years.
One thing that I want to make note of is that market aspect. It's huge, right? Because the Mets, I said this heading into the offseason, that the Mets will be at risk should things drag out, right? That's something that they want to avoid. There was early reportings entering the offseason that the Mets, if they get a deal done with Jake, they would certainly like to get it done sooner than later. But again, it's a two-way street. It's not like the Mets have all the say in here. They have very little leverage going on what Jake can control. And when you look at the guys that the Mets have shown interest in to this point that we know, Carlos Rodon is already on that list. He's that guy that's probably going to be getting paid the second most among starters out there, along with Justin Verlander and Jacob deGrom, right? He's going to be, as you mentioned, I think, Rec, you said he's going to be even getting potentially upwards of 30 mil a year. He's definitely due for a big payday on a multi-year deal, and rightfully so, because he proved a lot of people wrong, signing that 1-year prove-it deal with the Giants and being, for the most part, healthy while being a strikeout machine, just dominant stuff, exactly what you were hoping for in a 1-year stint in San Francisco for his sake. And then you also see some interesting names, and we've seen, to a lesser degree, Andrew Heaney, who I'm personally not against if he's going to be at the back end of the rotation or a swing man, but he isn't in the same type of class of the main focus here. Then you have that being Verlander. Came out today through multiple reports that the Mets have been pondering the idea of potentially going all in on Justin Verlander, especially in the scenario where they lose Jake and know that they're out of his sweepstakes, because Verlander is not on the qualifying offer. He declined last year, so the Astros were not able to offer it to him this year. There's no compensation to worry about. And maybe the Mets are going to run it back another year in a row with this win now team on signing a Verlander, just like they did with Max, on a 1 or 2 year deal, high AAV. Because if there's one thing that Steve Cohen can control, it's this win now window and having the money to do it, willing to go far and beyond the luxury tax. If you're going to go all in, that's the focus right now. Justin Verlander, I know that you're pushing 40, but we're going to give you the best offer possible to try to sway you away from potentially going back to Houston, which still feels like a likelihood, in my opinion, at this point in time. It would be truly quite the overpay if he leaves Houston, in my opinion, at least. But Verlander's someone that, while I have not been high on previously discussing him and thinking about, the more that I think about the potential of Verlander laying with the Mets, I think it's a stronger likelihood than what a lot of fans may believe, especially in the scenario where Jake leaves. And two, do I think it's the right move? That's a big question mark. I think you have a lot of concerns not banking on one, but two, basically 40-year-old studs, future Hall of Famers, to be fully healthy in a 162. And then what's the rest of your depth of your rotation looking like after that? Big question marks. It's very boomer bust. And that's, for me, the big thing. The Mets would be banking on a more so of an uncertainty with JV, at least in the short term, versus maybe wanting to shell out an uncertainty with Jake in the long term. Are the Texas Rangers going to offer Jake potentially 4 or 5 years? That's where the Mets are probably going to be stubborn and say, hey, I don't think we want to do that. We're focused on this 3 to 5 year window. We're already 2 years in. I don't think it's in our best interest to commit that kind of money AAV for upwards of 5 years. But then you come with the counter. You look at Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer. What do these guys have in common? They're the exact reasoning as to what you could hope to see Jacob deGrom become. Going into your late 30s and still being a dominant pitcher amongst the best in baseball, as long as he stays healthy. The arsenal may change a little bit because the velo's not going to be there when he's pushing 40. But again, being able to adapt. He's a generational talent, Jake. Wouldn't be surprising the slightest if he goes out and finishes his career on a high note, whenever that may end. One more pitcher that I do want to mention, however, that is Kodai Senga. Now, there's big question marks with Kodai Senga. He is the top pitcher coming out of the MPB. He's at the age of 29. He's a flamethrower, which, again, you don't know exactly how that's going to transition to the MLB level because the balls are a little bit different over there in the MPB. Had a sub-2 ERA this past year. Lightning stuff, again, touching 100, 101 on the gun, comfortably sitting in the high 90s. Throws a nasty forkball, something you don't see too often, along with other off-speed pitches. And he's a hot commodity. And unlike Masataka Yoshida, who's the top batter coming from the MPB that the Mets have scouted as well, you don't have to worry about a posting issue here with Kodai Senga because he's already through his contract. He's a free agent. So now he's going to be meeting with the Mets. That's been reported as of today, probably with the Yankees as well. And his agent has come out and already said that, one, he wants to go to a big market team, and two, he wants to go to a team that's already in a win now stage with potential to win it all as soon as this upcoming season. 2 boxes you can check off in the Mets' favor. And the presumed contract, according to MLB Trade Rumors, which is very reputable, has him around 5 years, $75 million. So when you look from an AAV standpoint, a guy that has yet to hit 30, that's actually very favorable for someone that has potential to either be an ace, a number 2, or at worst a number 3 in a competing team's rotation. That can give you more bang for your buck than a Chris Bassett per se. But the big thing here is it worth it? Is this a guy worth taking that risk on? Should the Mets make it happen? We all know Billy Epler was a big factor in landing Shohei Ohtani. Yes, Mike Trout definitely helped with the Angels, but Epler spent extensive period of time scouting in the MPB to watch Shohei to sign him. They have a great rapport from everything that I've seen, and this could even be a play should it make it happen to build the market for the Asian market in Queens with the Mets, because they have great things going in Queens as is, especially in Flushing and Corona with all these guys. I made note of going to a game last year between the Jays and the Mets, and it was Korean night with Hyunjin Ryu on the mound. The entire visitors section just filled with Korean descent. It was really cool to see. And you would see that same type of vibe, more of a diversity, if you will, bringing more people in the ballpark to Queens. But the bigger thing, too, is that this could help entice a Shohei Ohtani to potentially sign here next offseason. So with all that being said, Rex, starting with you, what's your thoughts on especially Kodai Senga? Do you think that he is a guy worth taking a risk on here for the Mets should they be able to make something happen?
100% he's worth taking a risk on. 5 years is a long contract for
I agree.
a guy who's unproven. That said, you're talking about $15 million a year. You're talking about basically an average major league pitcher salary. If you get to free agency, that's kind of what the average guy makes nowadays, which is crazy. But yeah, I mean, the stuff is tantalizing. The guy touches 100. He's got a really nasty, you called it a fork ball, called a splitter. I don't know, it's similar, same thing to me. And he's got a slider. The one thing is the walk rate has been a little bit high throughout his career.
It was around
Great
3,
K rate, though. What's that?
I think it was around 3.
I mean, for his career, I think it was 3.8, but it's been up and down from up to 4.5 and down to 3.5-ish. Look, he's a guy I love signing. Foreign guys on. I guess my experience is when I was with Oakland. We brought Cespedes over when I was there in 2012. And he was unbelievable at
lights out.
What was it, 4 years, 36 million, 9 million a year. He was ridiculously good. And so you only need that to hit once, and you touched on a lot of other factors, reasons, no posting fee. You don't have to worry about a qualifying offer, anything like that attached to him. There's a lot of reasons that this makes sense for the Mets to go out and do. This could be your answer to potentially no Rodon, potentially no DeGrom. Who knows? Maybe this guy and a couple other pieces that you really like. Chris Bassett comes back, and maybe 1 or 2 other starting pitchers, and you build out a staff that's deep. Maybe it's not top heavy like it was last year with DeGrom and Scherzer, but maybe it's really deep, because when you start throwing in McGill and Peterson, you get a staff that really rounds out nicely and can compete from 1 to 5, and that would be a pretty nice look for this team. Again, love this kid stuff. I shouldn't say kid. He's going to be 30 next year. But realistically, I love this fit for the Mets. And if I'm him, to be honest with you, I'm not afraid to go out there on like a 1-year prove it deal. If someone's willing to give me 5 for 75, somebody else might be willing to go 1 for 20, 1 for 23, 4. I don't know, and see, just kind of see. Noah Syndergaard got what, 20-some million this year with the Angels. Like, I'd give this kid 1 year, 27 million. Why not? So you give him a shot maybe, and then he can go out next year and get a huge deal if he pitches lights out. So there's a lot of reasons that it makes sense. There could be fits, different kinds of fits for the contract for the Mets, and but no, I like it regardless. Whether there's a link for Shohei for him to come over after because he's here, that'd be great. And that, obviously, who doesn't want to have Shohei Ohtani playing for their team? But just getting this kid in, I think would be pretty fun.
You okay there, Wardy?
A little bit, yeah.
Got hot in here.
He's bored.
Every time we say his name, it gets hot in here. With Senga, it's I always have some concerns about bringing these guys over, because Wardy, to your point, we were talking about this off air a few hours ago. The ball's different, right? So obviously he's not going to be throwing as hard as he was over there. The ball's not going to be moving as much. There's a reason that a splitter, or as you called it, a fork ball, it's like the most common off-speed pitch out there, because the way the ball is, the way the ball is configured, that ball dips and dives like crazy. Here, you've got to adjust your grip. You've got to almost not fully relearn it, but, repolish it, if you will. And so that always scares me a bit in terms of the learning curve for a team that's very win now. And then in terms of logistics and just what you're competing with, the West Coast, when you're dealing with Asian players, a lot different. I think the East Coast, way more appealing to Latin American players. West Coast, way more appealing for Asian players. So, the Padres, instant advantage right there.
I think Padres have a big advantage too, already having a guy like Darvish.
Darvish.
Yeah, that might be like that big X factor for them, honestly.
Yeah, big advantage if you're the San Francisco Giants, the San Diego Padres, the Dodgers. I wouldn't think he goes to the Angels because Shohei probably won't be there more than another year.
And they already, as I mentioned earlier, they got Tyler Anderson on a very good deal. I will say he's only making like 13 mil AAV over 3.
That's kind of Tyler Anderson money, though. I think this year was not what you should expect out of Tyler Anderson.
I 100% agree, but I mean, even given his market value, I think that he could have maybe gotten a little bit more. Maybe I'm wrong, but it was a good deal for him. But point is that Angels already have their top 4 set in their rotation. So does that mean that Senga has much more potential to go there? I don't know, but I if I'm a betting man, I'm saying that Senga is not going to land with the Angels.
Yeah, I would say Dodgers, Padres, Giants, and the Blue Jays are the teams that I think the Mets would have an advantage over the Yankees there. But yeah, I mean, we'll see where it goes. To me, it's I'm way more focused on either Jake or Rodon. To me, it's got to be one of those two. And Rec, we were talking about this before. You think Rodon's going to sign first? I think that would actually be terrible for him. Because I think once Jake signs, once he comes off the board, Rodon is going to get so much more money than if he was to sign first. So I think for Rodon, he's really got to sit this one out and wait because his market value as the next best commodity when Jake is gone, it's going to soar through the roof and he'll probably be overpaid, maybe get a 6th year or his AAV will just shoot up. But I think he's got to wait. And then the last thing that I wanted to say when we were talking about earlier with all the Verlander rumors is that if he shows signs of leaving Houston, they were one of the few teams we didn't mention. I think the Astros are in on Jacob deGrom.
I hate this.
I think the Astros right now, I would say it's Mets Rangers at the top, and the Astros are probably, in my opinion, Rec, more likely than the Padres. I think the Padres for Senga way more realistic than for Jake. But I would say Astros and Cardinals over even the Padres, Giants, and then Dodgers always in the mix, of course.
See, I feel like the Dodgers would still have an upper hand here. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think especially losing a guy that they expected to return to their rotation today makes things a little bit more of a question mark for them. They're going to be adamant. The Dodgers don't land one of a Jake, Rodon, Senga, or Verlander, one of those 4. That would be awfully surprising.
They're in on Bassett. Watch out for the Dodgers with Chris Bassett. Yeah, and they've already got Kershaw, Dustin May, Gonsolin, Urias, who I think deserves some serious Cy Young consideration that we'll find out tomorrow.
He's probably one of the most underrated pitchers in baseball.
Yeah, because his sabermetrics aren't all that flashy.
Yeah.
When you deep dive, like his velo's not great, but the guy just pitches his ass off year after year. He's like a 20-game winner. So I think the Dodgers probably less likely for Jake, more likely for Bassett to round things out over there. But yeah, watch out for those Astros.
Okay, let's get to a donation here, and then if we have any further comments we'd like to address, we will before we wrap up the show. Shout out everyone watching on YouTube. Don't hesitate to smash that like and subscribe button. Greatly appreciate it. Help us get to a couple hundred likes by the end of the live show. Or if you're watching on replay, make sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments below with everything going on. And if you're listening wherever you get your audio podcast, make sure you follow, rate, review wherever you get your pods as well. Thank you so much in advance. But Ed Flood here on YouTube with the donor earlier says, I'm late to the show, but is there any benefit for not adding guys to the 40-man when there's space, the spots as to why couldn't you bring back Mangum? I can't say his name. Someone say it for me. Can someone say
Mangum?
I don't do this. I don't do names. Don't even.
Jake Mangum. Or you can just say Magnum.
No. We're talking about the guy next to him. Consuerga?
Oh, Consuerga.
Consuerga. Got a little okay.
Come on, Consuerga.
So without really putting much further thought into this, and let me know if I'm wrong, guys, I'd imagine that the reason is simply that the Mets, yes, they have roster spots, but that's just because of the fact that they have so many free agents. So they obviously want to keep those 40-man roster spots open because they have a lot of moves that are upcoming. Am I wrong in saying that?
I mean, I understand. I think the point that Ed is trying to make there is that you have a roster spot, you add the guy, you can't lose him then, and eventually if you take him off, but you don't have to. The one thing I'll say is that the Rule 5 draft is different than someone getting claimed on waivers. Someone gets claimed on waivers, yes, they go on their 40-man roster. They don't necessarily have to be in the big leagues. You protect a guy from the Rule 5 draft. Or, I'm sorry, you don't protect a guy from the Rule 5 draft, but he's big league eligible and he gets selected. He might have to be on the big league roster in order for another team to take him. So it's easier to get him by the Rule 5 draft and keep him in your organization than it is to add him to the 40-man roster and then have to take him off later and have him go through waivers where someone can just claim him and still stick him in the minor leagues, but on a 40-man roster. So that would be the advantage for a team not placing him on the 40-man roster right now, because knowing that you're pretty much going to have to put him on waivers later, there's a better chance you'll lose him there than you will at the Rule 5 draft.
Gotcha. All righty. Well, I think with that being said, anything else we want to touch on? Again, a lot of rumblings, a lot of news going on. I feel like next week's show, we have an idea of what our main topic is going to be. However, there could be a very good chance that we're not going to even get to that topic because of more rumblings and news coming out. And this will also be something for people watching on YouTube, that there will be scenarios where we may be able to do some breaking news live streams, depending on if the timing works out for the Mets. Because again, they haven't scratched really the surface yet with offseason news. We've seen stuff come out today. We saw Anthony Rizzo sign back with the Yanks. You saw them get a little nervous after not even 24 hours of reporting that the Astros are prioritizing Rizzo as their number one first base target. He signs a multi-year deal to stay in the Bronx. You see, of course, Tyler Anderson go to the Anaheim Angels. You see a lot of moves with the Tampa Bay Rays trying to free up some spots. Ryan Yarbrough was a little bit of a surprise. That was DFA'd, so he's officially a free agent. Lefty swingman that Rec doesn't really care about. That's okay. And yeah, a lot of moves are going to be happening, but we're
Josh Peterson and Martin Perez accepted their qualifying offers.
Jock shocked me.
It shouldn't. Are you shocked by him accepting or being offered?
No, it shocked me that he accepted. I thought he could have gotten.
Is Jock going to get more than a 3-year deal? Is Jock going to get more than $15 million a year?
I mean,
I don't think so.
2 for 30 would have been possible for him.
But why take 2 for 30 when you could do 1 for 19 or 20 and then hit the free agent market again next year? I wouldn't. If I'm him, I take the qualifying offer. I go back, and especially now, because now that the shift is gone, now his numbers are going to be better going into next year. He's going to have he's just going to have better numbers going into his year, his free agency year. So no, I think that made all the sense in the world. Perez didn't shock me either, because I mean, look, he was great in the first half, not as good in the second half. Yeah. And where did that come from? I mean, this guy was very average over the course of his career.
He followed his former teammate in Kyle Gibson. Kyle Gibson, when he was going to lean up to his trade in 2021 with the Phillies, was best thing since sliced bread out of nowhere after being average his entire career, and then went back to being average with the Phillies. So
he wasn't going to get more than 3 for 45, which, I mean, that's a great number, but I'd take the 1 year $20 million and then just see what happens. He's betting on himself, hoping that he can work it for next year, and good for him if he does.
By the way, Rafi Montero got a 3-year deal to stay in Houston, right? He went off the market quicker than I expected.
Yeah, $34 million, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a lot for a reliever.
He's pitched really well in the last couple of years, both Seattle and there. So I mean,
didn't love him in the playoffs. I thought the World Series he was really shaky, but I mean regular season he was great.
One last thing I want to make note regarding Peterson is, he was a guy I would have loved to see on the Mets. I think he really would have helped fill things as not only a corner outfielder option, but as a DH type. And yes, I know you have Volga back again. Should you keep him on the roster? But Jock also hits lefties perfectly fine. Had a north of 800 OPS against lefties this past year. I mean, he would have made sense for adding pop in this lineup without costing an absolute bag. But he's Bay Area native, signed a small deal to go to his hometown team last year, balled out with them, was a Mets killer in doing so, gets offered roughly $20 million for another year with a Giants team that's not only trying to run it back, but be better and actually be competitive yet again next year, regardless.
And now he gets to hit the market next year without the qualifying offer attached, no matter what. So
exactly,
it's another bonus.
Yep, that one. As soon as that was offered him, I was like, he's signing that. Why wouldn't he? Right. So that makes perfect sense for him, and congratulations to him in doing so. But guys, I think that does it for the show. I want to thank you all so much for watching. This was episode 32 of Bleav in Queens. Make sure to check us out on wherever you get your podcasts. That is Apple, Spotify. I mean, literally everywhere. Do not hesitate from Rate Reviewing, wherever you get your pods. Make sure to check out Anthony Recker, always on MLB Tonight, doing great stuff for MLB Network. When's the next time you're going to be on TV, Rec?
Thursday morning, I'm doing Hot Stove.
There you go. Hot Stove.
What time is that?
9 to 11.
Ooh.
Getting up at 6 a.m. to watch you Thursday morning. Good to know.
Exactly how I want to start my
There's
day.
a record
with a
button,
Rec on
Joe.
TV. And Joe, any new things coming up with you and your podcast, Sorrello Sports Talk?
Sorrello Sports Talk on national radio tomorrow night, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Bob Papa joining the show. Going to talk a little Giants, 7-2 New York Giants. And then Bleav Me on Stadium Network. We'll be on like 6 times from Friday evening through Sunday morning. Myself, Brandon Lang, Cordell Stewart, giving you the best bets for the week in the NFL.
Love to hear that. All right, guys, thank you so much
I
for
still
watching
need some
and
help
listening.
in that area. I'm just dying.
Actually, I got to tell this story really quick, Rick.
Okay, all right.
So
fine.
Saturday night, I'm out with my girl, and I'm meeting her best friend. The guy's like been best friends for like over a decade, and he's like her older brother, right? And she tells me he likes to bet on football. She's like, "Oh, you guys will have something in common. The guy loves to bet on sports." I'm like, perfect. So I meet the guy. I go, "Hey, so and so, great to meet you, man. I hear you like a little action on the games." I said, "Titans tomorrow, lock of the week." Mind you, it's like 11 o'clock at night. I'm feeling it. He's feeling it. And I just go, "Titans lock of the week." He takes out his phone, G on the Tennessee Titans. I was more stressed for his bet in that game than I was for my own, but it hit. I look great. Now I'm in with the friends, and it's all because of my lock of the week.
There you go.
Best way to do it, man.
Yeah, my betting, I was on a great hot streak to start November. We cooled down a little bit, but we'll come back. All right,
I don't even want to get started on the Bills this week. I had them at 4.5 because I did it early in the week, thinking, okay, if Josh Allen plays, they like at home, no problem. And they didn't kick that field goal. It was that like towards the end of the third quarter, maybe beginning of the fourth. I don't remember. And I was like losing my mind, going, "You don't kick this field." That was the 4th and 2 play. He throws the pick. He gets hurt on the play. Luckily, he came back in the game, but didn't matter. They lost anyway. That was such a so bad.
Brutal.
Anyway.
TCU -2.5 this week at Baylor, guys. Hop on the Horned Frogs.
All right, guys, have a great one. We'll be
Only
back next
2.5?
week.
Yeah.
2.5. Peace out, guys. Have a great night.